So I think one needs to be careful of that. And so the second part of making your trading decision is, okay, price has crossed the FLD. Was it a good price cross? Did it look fantastic? I don't think it does really, but apart from that, do I want to now enter the market? Because you're taking a delayed trading decision, you have options open to you. Okay, just because you said yesterday I am taking a delayed trading decision, doesn't mean you have to enter the market. It means you must take a trading decision, which means you must say, okay, here is the evidence. Price has squeezed over that 40-day FLD. This is only a possible analysis. We're going to be celebrating the Queen's birthday on Monday, so it's a long weekend coming in. Should I be setting my entry orders for tomorrow and Friday? Personally, I wouldn't, but trading is all about your own personal approach. You know, you have to take trading decisions that you can stand by. If you can't stand by your trading decisions and go back and say, okay, I made that decision and it was the right trading decision or the wrong trading decision, then you will never be able to succeed as a trader, as I'm sure many of you know. Okay, so that's a very long discussion about the 40-day FLD. Gosh, I went on about it for a really long time. What about the 20-day FLD? Because if you're trading the 40-day cycle, you will know that if price crosses the 20-day FLD, then many Hurst analysts will say that's good enough reason to get into the market. So let's have a quick discussion. I'll try and make it a bit quicker than our discussion of the 40-day FLD. Where is that 20-day FLD? I can't even see it. Oh, here we go. Here's the 20-day FLD. So that 20-day FLD was in fact crossed on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, was in fact crossed, but only barely. It was touched on Wednesday and properly crossed on Thursday, I would say, because again, not all FLD price crosses, not all price crosses are perfectly equal. So that FLD was crossed on Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday. Again, you've got the same argument. If you're going to trade, intra-trade on the basis of the 20-day FLD, you need to understand what you're doing. What are you doing? Well, if price crosses the 20-day FLD, that means that there has been a trough of at least 20-day magnitude. Okay. Now, you're expecting a trough of 40-week magnitude, as you know, 40-week magnitude. So if you get evidence that a 20-day trough has formed, does that not maybe mean that one of the alternate analyses might be playing out, and that in fact this trough that has occurred is of only 20-day magnitude? Well, of course, what you should be doing is having a look at your alternate analyses and saying, is there an alternate analysis which in fact has a trough of only 20-day strength there, or 40-day strength perhaps? In which case, if price crosses the 20-day FLD or the 40-day FLD, that is not the evidence that I'm waiting for. Why? Because the evidence that you're waiting for to enter the trade is not just that the trough of your trading cycle has formed, but the trough of the cycle that you are basing your whole trading decision upon has formed. And we are making our trading decision upon the basis that the 40-week cycle trough has formed in the market. Okay? If a trough of the 40-day cycle has formed, then in fact it would be the final 40-day cycle going into that 40-week trough, and I certainly don't want to be long in that final 40-day cycle. As we've discussed previously, the shape of the 80-day or 40-day cycle, the last 80-day or 40-day cycle going into a 40-week cycle trough will be bearish. So you don't want to be buying long. So it's important to understand the tools that you're using when you're making a trading decision, because those tools should not just be used willy-nilly. Let's pluck an FLD out of the air and use that FLD. You've got to use it on the basis of the analysis that you're tracking. Okay. There we go. That's a sort of slightly quicker discussion about the 20-day and the 40-day FLD. So in terms of making decisions, the decisions that you're making, as I've just pointed out, have to do with what those FLDs provide you with evidence about. And as Nathan points out, price is now also in a pause zone. That's right, because your FLDs are all crossing each other, and Sentient Trader is plotting some pause zones there. I hide the pause zones because I like them to be really subtle, and I showed you last week, changed them. I won't do that again now. But as Nathan points out, we are now in a pause zone. Okay, so things aren't looking tremendously positive. When you're making trading decisions, trading decisions are decisions that are made by by people. And in fact, trading decisions are fantastically and wonderfully complex trading decisions because although at the basic idea is very simple, it's a kind of a should I buy or should I sell? Trading decisions that you make have to do with your own personal trading style, has to do with why you're making the trading decision. But if you've been looking at this analysis, as we did last week, and we discussed it and said, oh, it looks very possible, the 40-week cycle has come into play. Before you're going to make trading decisions on any analysis, I think it's important to ask yourself, hang on a moment, what else could be happening here? It's very rare that there's only one possible analysis. Usually I think there are usually I think there are actually only about two analyses that really count. Or in fact, the difference between many different analyses boils down to one thing. And the one thing in this particular case has to do with the magnitude of the trough in early June. We are all in agreement, I believe, or at least all my analyses, all four of these analyses here, are all in agreement that the 40-week cycle is about to form or has formed, and we're trading on the basis of that. So let's have a look at some of the other analyses that might be taking place. Okay, this is an analysis that we were tracking in fact, zoom out and just point it out to you. This is the analysis that we were tracking previously in our Oz Trader chat, and I pointed out last week, and just a quick sort of a few little points about it. Here we go. Of course, there's the 18-month cycle on the 4th of October last year. Here's the 20-week cycle in early March, which seems like a very viable position for the 20-week cycle. Here is the 40-day cycle in the second week of April. And now last week, you might remember, this analysis was being rejected. And you might further remember that the reason why this analysis was being rejected was because it called for a much too long 40-day cycle over here. Let's measure that 40-day cycle. Up and there we go. If we measure that 40-day cycle is sitting at 55 days in length. It's too long for a 40-day cycle. Why? Because what's the rule? The rule is 150% of the nominal length. The nominal length is 34 days, so 34 times 150% is 51. So that's 4 days too long for a 40-day cycle. Why is Sentient Trader now presenting it again as a possible analysis? Okay, and there's an interesting reason, and I won't dwell on it for too long. But last week when we did the analysis, Sentient Trader wouldn't position that 80-day trough over there, and now it will. And if you perform your analyses using your current version 2s of Sentient Trader, you might find that Sentient Trader will perform this analysis and position the 80-day cycle trough there. Why will it do that? Because of the way in which it qualifies these troughs. And I'm not going to spend too much time because I've got about 10 minutes left in today's Trader Chat. But let me just point something out to you. You see this trough on the 4th of June. This trough was formed by price moving down on Monday. Okay, I don't know how to... price moving down on Monday, then price bouncing back up again on the Wednesday. I beg your pardon, on the Tuesday. So in fact, this trough was only below other troughs by 1 day, or possibly overnight, basically less than a day. So in fact, although it looks clearly like a really, it's a big trough on our charts, in fact, when you are trying to rank price troughs and how strong they are, in fact, Sentient Trader says, whoa, hang on a moment, that took only 1 day. There is possible fundamental interaction. We've spoken about fundamental interaction previously. So there is possible fundamental interaction taking place here. But Sentient Trader will not do it until the bounce out of that trough is also disappointing. How do you measure the bounce out of the trough? You go from the trough to the, and let me clear this so that I can show you. How do you measure the bounce? You go from the trough to, to the latest low. So, and you look at the angle of that line. Okay? The angle of that line is disappointingly shallow. So it's not a very good bounce. The Sentient Trader says there is a possibility that that was fundamental interaction. If you've got a very strong bounce, Sentient Trader will not consider the possibility of fundamental interaction. Okay, I'm giving a little insight into how Sentient Trader performs its analysis, which I think is useful. So when we were performing the analysis last week on Thursday, none of this price action was here. Our bounce was looking very good. That was it, okay? Let me draw a parallel line over here. That's a good bounce, okay? Really good bounce. The Sentient Trader was not considering the possibility of fundamental interaction. So for that reason, Sentient Trader will now consider the possibility that it should position the 80-day cycle trough over there. And it will allow for an extra long 40-day cycle over here, okay? But last week it wouldn't, because of the fact that it wouldn't have considered the potential of fundamental interaction occurring on that day. This week, this analysis has returned as a possibility. But I'd like to go back, because our discussion has been about what decisions you would have made last week. So last week, this analysis wasn't really sort of available to you, if you like, as a possibility. But last week, I did present this analysis to you. I don't have time to give you too much detail about it, but let's just quickly take a look at it. I did present this analysis to you last week and indicate that there was the possibility that, in fact, this is the analysis that is playing out in the market. And here is the 18-month cycle trough on the 4th of October. Here is the 20-week cycle trough on the 6th of March, or near the 6th of March, and that the 80-day cycle trough could have been one of these troughs over here. Price bounced out of that 80-day cycle trough, and we know that we're expecting that cycle, that 80-day cycle, to be bearish. It's the conversation we've had at previous Oz Trader chats. I'm sorry if I'm sort of rushing through this, but we have spoken about it before. I see a question from Steve. Let me just finish this train of thought, and I'll come back to that question, Steve. And so this analysis, which I did is alternative. Now, what was this analysis saying about that very important trough in our minds, because it's the trough that we were going to trade out of on the 4th of June? This analysis